At the age of 13, journalist and podcaster Louise McLoughlin was told by her parents that she was donor conceived and that the man who raised her was not her biological father.
Well, Louise joins us now to share her story and to discuss legalisation around donor conception in Ireland. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Can I ask you, age 13, it's a vulnerable enough age. Yeah, so how did that impact you to be told that?
You know, I'm so glad that my parents told me. And to be clear, there was just no guidance around this at the time whatsoever. They were basically told by the fertility clinic, don't tell, ever, because you could get away with it. You know, this was before mass DNA testing. This was before people were doing DNA tests at Christmas for fun. Obviously, a discovery like this, you know, it's the biggest discovery of my life. It put me on a path that I never expected I would be put on in a million years. But for me, really, the issue and the frustration finding out age 13 was that I didn't have access to this DNA testing. And also the clinics had made it so that I could not find out the identity of this person who was my biological father. There were no records kept. And there was just, when I went back to these clinics, there was just no information. So I was really left at what you say is, you know, quite a confusing age. I was left with no path to find out the things that I wanted to find out. And, you know, that wasn't necessarily, you know, who is my father, but it was, you know, where do I come from and does this change anything about me? Who am I on a basic level?
How did you go about finding out who your biological father was?
So I sat with it for many years. Again, DNA testing just really wasn't a thing. But I got to age, maybe when I got to 20, I really realised that I wanted some answers. So I started signing up to these DNA sites that were growing in popularity. You know, I paid out of my pocket to spit in a tube and send my DNA away. And I sat on those sites for years.
Waiting?
Yes, waiting. And originally, you know, it takes a few weeks to process the DNA, and I would log on and I would really be expecting a match to be there. And when that goes on for years and you're on various different sites, it just really started chipping away at me. And I just was so set up for disappointment. By the time I finally got my first match, which was around 8 years ago, you know, I'm 33 now. I was told at age 13, it's a very long gap. I'd really lost any hope that I was ever going to get a biological match. And that was a half-sister. And, you know, I grew up an only child. I never even thought about the concept of siblings, let alone finding one down the line. But in many ways, finding her did answer the questions I had about, you know, nature versus nurture, certain aspects of my personality that maybe I didn't see reflected. And now I met her and I saw them reflected there. It was just such a fascinating process.
Okay, so was that an awkward meeting with your sister?
You know what, I say it's like the worst first date you'll ever go on, because a first date with, you know, a romantic partner, you never have to see them again. But there is so much hope associated with a meeting like this, especially when it's your first sibling match, because I wanted to love her, you know, and I wanted her to love me. I didn't want to meet her face to face and not like her and not be liked. And I really, you know, again, I had these questions in my mind and I really did want an answer, but it was incredible. Awkward, of course, it's a stranger and you're putting a lot of emotional investment in that meeting, but absolutely incredible.
Was she donor conceived as well?
Yes, so she has two mums, so it's the same sperm donor, but she grew up always knowing the truth because, of course, you have two mums. It's just, it was the reality in her household.
Okay, you have found other siblings since then?
So I have matched with 7 so far. I have met 3 of those. It's complicated because, again, donor conception, a lot of people aren't told that they're donor conceived. So when you log on, if you've logged on for fun, maybe to find out like your ancestry, you log on now, it's a very different place to when I signed up and I was sitting there alone for many years. Now, if I have a sibling match who signs up, we've got a biological father, we have, you know, I think 3 siblings on that database, and a biological grandmother who has since passed away. But I mean, you've got those matches there. If you don't know you're donor conceived and you log on for something you've done for fun to find out if maybe your grandfather was half Scandinavian, you know, and then you find this, it's huge upheaval.
And that's the danger of websites like that in some way as well. When you do, something can just leap out and shock you if you're not prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the word danger, I mean...
Psychologically dangerous it can be.
Absolutely,
for some people,
fully agree. Yes, I mean, yeah, the truth is powerful, and I do think what these sites has done is it allows people to now find out these answers where fertility clinics, for example, have fallen short.
The door was shut for you for a long time in finding out who your dad was, your biological father was. So tell us how you eventually found and met him indeed.
Yeah, I mean, so that, again, you know, found my half-sister sitting on this site. And I really had given up hope because with siblings, there's many of them. You know, they find out they're donor conceived, they might also want these answers. This man donated sperm, told he was going to be anonymous. He never expected to be found. So the likelihood of him kind of wanting to seek me out, in my mind, is very low. So I had given up hope. But around 2 years after I found my half-sister, Jess, we just got this match, and it was his half-cousin, or his second cousin in Canada. And DNA sites, I mean, it's so complex. It really is. You know, you have to go up the tree and down the tree and across. But I just knew, the second I saw it, I knew it was close enough for us to find him. And I messaged Jess and I was like, I think we're going to find this guy. And she went from a position of, you know what, I don't really, you know, the concept of a dad was quite foreign to her. Do I really care? To, you know, laser focus, let's get the information we can. And within hours, we found a family tree. We found my biological grandmother. And then we went down, we found her 2 sons, and one of them just looked exactly like us. We found his website, found his number, and I called him.
What was it like meeting him eventually?
It was, yeah, again, like the worst first date ever. It was really awkward. It's awkward. And that relationship has changed a lot. You know, our first meet, it's never going to be what you expect it to be. But he, you know, in that first phone call, he never expected to be found. He picks up the phone, he's on a beach in Greece, and he said, what you're saying makes sense. I did donate sperm, and you're very welcome to have found me. And, you know, I've done this podcast called You Look Like Me, where I speak to donor conceived people in Ireland and around the world. And there have been so many stories of people finding their sperm or egg donor, reaching out and being met with rejection, silence, restraining orders. I mean, wow. So for me to receive the welcome that I did, you know, I'm very, very fortunate. And I do need to be clear about that, because when, you know, I've followed the course of meeting him over the podcast, and I just, do want to be clear that this happy ending, and of course it's not the ending, it's actually just the beginning of the relationship in many ways, but it's not necessarily commonplace, and I do feel very cherished to have ended up in that space.
But you'll get answers, as in, you know, for health reasons,
Exactly.
You're going to discover an awful lot. So legislation needs to be put in place.
So the law in Ireland has changed. So as of 2020, anyone conceived, I think in May 2020, once they turn 18, they now can find out the identity of their donor. The issue with that for me is that we're not going to see the effect of that legislation until late 2030s, when these people turn 18. Very, very long time.
It doesn't help people in this situation.
Absolutely does not. It leaves them in the dark. And I know that having been at that age of 13 with no path to the answers that I wanted, it's a very painful time when you don't have a route. That age, in my opinion, in Ireland needs to come down, and it needs to come down to 0.
Louise, thank you so much for talking to us this morning and sharing your story, which is utterly fascinating and compelling. And of course, more from your life and is available on your podcast as well.
Yeah, for more information from Louise, you can listen to her podcast, You Look Like Me, wherever you stream your podcasts.